Hello. I got my coffee while my baby is sleeping. I thought that that I should continue on a roll of testimonies and stories and God stories, obviously. So today I thought I would share. I guess I was going to tell the story of my testimony, but of course, once my next door neighbor comes home and I can hear them with their motor. Anyway, so I'm going to be quick. So I feel today was going to be a day where I share how God told me my husband was my husband, because I guess we're kind of like chronologically working through some videos of our testimony, and I thought, oh, you know what, I may as well share for those who were interested. And I think the way that God confirms who your spouse is different for everybody, but I'm just going to say how I was told that this was my husband, which made me, make bolder moves across the world, and instead of going to LA, going to Atlanta. So I was single for a very, very long time, and a lot of my friends were, people that were already in relationships or getting married, and I was kind of like one of the last ones standing, particularly in my secular world, but in my secular friendships. But even in my godly friendships, I think most of my friends were married. There are some single ones, and they're like beautiful, and I'm like, if you're single, I got some single girls out there ready to be mingling and married. But basically, I always wanted a supernatural story in terms of how I met my spouse. And so in terms of how I really wanted God to confirm who I was going to marry, only because I had been in very toxic relationships, and I think I was toxic as well. But so I had, things to grow up in, but also those people were not compatible to me. But I also think they were just really lovely people, but were they compatible for me? Not really. And I think what I've learned over the years is like, you can have two really wonderful people and there's nothing necessarily wrong with you, but you're just not compatible. Your communication skills or the way that you communicate, don't really work together. I think God created two people specifically for each other. Do I believe in the one? I kind of do, in terms of even in the Bible, like, where Isaac was looking for a wife, and he asked the servant to find him a wife, and God confirmed Rebecca. And it was Rebecca. The woman at the well, to feed the horse, and the guy, the servant. Anyway, and just like so many times in the Bible, you always heard about God confirming who that spouse was. And I wanted that. I really wanted that. And I remember being like really frustrated in my singleness and being like, oh, okay, I'm going to go on an app, or I'm going to, do this and do that. And I really, really tried to, open my opportunities as much as I can to meet the one or the person that I wanted to marry, because I wasn't going to stay at home and also wish for God to bring in a spouse. I knew he wasn't going to just drop out of thin air. And also I might do a little video on like how to be content in your singleness. I did do a blog post, so I can share that for those who are single. And, during the time of singleness, I think this is like the most important time to kind of refine yourself and learn what you like, learn what you don't like. I might do a video like straight after this, only because if I have time with the baby sleeping, then I may as well make one. But anyway, I feel like I did a really good time being single. I felt like I really used that time wisely. And did I, date a few frogs? Absolutely. But I would say I did it pretty good. I really tried to anyway, after I got saved. So anyway, in terms of how God confirmed my husband was my husband, obviously I met him when I went to his press tour for The Heart of Man, which is amazing Christian film. Please everyone watch it, not because he's my husband, but because I actually went there and I actually got supernaturally touched by the Lord. He healed me in so many ways because I had been cheated on by my ex-boyfriend before I had been saved. And The Heart of Man was just such a powerful movie that shows the sinful nature of us as humans, as sinners, and how we can be redeemed by the love of God, and how he chases us, how the Father chases us because he loves us. So anyway, it's the prodigal son. My husband plays the prodigal son, but anyway, so when I met him in 2018, I never got a confirmation that this was my husband or anything like that. So as you all know, but just for recap of who haven't heard our testimony or our love story, we met for literally for 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. We chatted. There was a bit of a lineup for a question and answer to meet the lead actor and the producers of The Heart of Man, and I lined up, and there was like a huge line of people, so I didn't want to like take too much of his time. All I just wanted to do was encourage him and say, like, I'm an actor, you're an actor, we're Christians, please continue doing what you're doing, because that was so impactful. Because literally I was crying during the movie. It was such a beautiful movie. It healed me in so many different ways and made me understand my ex, and the things that he did to me wasn't just him, but like maybe things he was struggling with. And anyway, it was beautiful. I never got any confirmation when I met him that he was my husband. I remember remembering his name, and he basically, as I was leaving, I was like, okay, bye. He was like, add me on Instagram, or, you know, follow me on social media. I'm like, okay, no worries. Like, good luck with everything. And I do remember obviously meeting him and being like, wow, he's a very handsome man. Again, you know, if you're watching the film, he's very handsome in the film. So I was like, damn. But never did I think in my world like that was my husband or anything like that. I was watching it purely because I felt called to watch it, and it healed me. So anyway, when I did finally reconnect with my husband, I do remember there was a sense of peace. But I do remember like our conversation flowed very easily. We chatted because I was going to move to LA, and he was like, hey, what did you think of Atlanta? And I was like, I never heard of Atlanta. And he's like, hey, how about if we jump on a call? And then he's like, hey, why don't we jump on a video call? I'm like, you know, I don't even remember chatting to you like 4 years ago. No, why not? You know, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, we're cool. You know, I don't know you, may as well get to know you. And I remember chatting to him, and I don't know what it was about him specifically, but I remember being like super excited to chat to him. I do remember just before chatting to him, I was gonna like, you know, be in my pajamas and stuff, because I was like, it's just video chat. But I was like, okay, probably I should put a little bit of makeup and just look a little bit cute. And in my head, I do remember being like, oh, who knows, he might be my husband. Like, you know, you kind of think of that like when you kind of meet any Christian single. But I remember chatting to him for like 3 hours. It was like, we didn't even chat about acting. We just chatted about our journey for the last 2 years during COVID, about our breakups, our family, what we had learned, our relationship with God. And I just remember being like, I'm so sorry, I'm so woo-woo. Like, I'm so spiritually woo-woo. Like, not many Christians are like that, or like, maybe you're not like that, but I'm like that. And I kind of was like unapologetically being like, oh, I'm very woo-woo kind of a thing. And he didn't say anything about his walk with the Lord. But I just remember having like peace chatting to him, and I was like, wow, that was a really good conversation. And I left being like, wow, he's a really cool guy. And I remember being like, if he was single, which he did confirm he was single during the conversation, which I was like, you're single, let me help you out. But I remember being like, oh, I think if he was single and we were in the same city, I wouldn't mind, you know, dating him or getting to know him on a deeper level, because he is super easy to chat to, and we had a lot of similarities. our walk with the Lord was kind of very similar. But at that time, again, I didn't know how deep his relationship was with God. So I kind of was like, but at the same time, I wanted to see how he actually loves the Lord. If we see the Lord in the same way, if our relationship with the Lord was the same, and if we had experienced the Lord in a similar way, because I had experiences previously on set and like, you know, seeing people be saved and like see people be delivered. I had gone through like some deliverance and healing ministry. And so I knew, I'm not saying that I knew God deeply compared to other people, but I wanted to have a guy who was going to be my husband to experience the Lord on a deeper level, just because my previous ex-boyfriend kind of would always laugh at how spiritual I was, and he was like, oh, you're so woo-woo, like, and roll his eyes. And I knew just from that experience that I didn't want that anymore. I wanted someone that could add to what I had experienced and give me more of what they had experienced, like kind of like a give and take kind of relationship. So I chatted to him, and then I remember just being like, wow, he's super cool. I would love to get to know him deeper. And he had mentioned he had been on a Shawn Bolz podcast, which I will link because if you guys want to listen to it, it's super cool as well. But I was like, oh, I should listen to that just to hear what he said. Like, again, just to get to know him as a person, because I'm just very fascinated. I just remember being really fascinated by his story and being like, wow, I want to know more about this guy. Anyway, so I remember chatting to him and then going through his Instagram, obviously, because, you know, you chat to someone and you're like, okay, he's super cute. I'm going to stalk him a little bit. And he had stalked me and he had like liked a few of my photos, and I was going through his and kind of seeing like, again, more about his personality. And I was listening to his podcast with Shawn Bolz, and I was like, wow, he's actually like pretty cool in terms of his journey with the Lord, and how, as we shared in the last video, of his journey with God and bringing him to acting from ministry and missionary work and being a youth pastor. And I screenshotted his photo and then sent it to my mom. And my mom, like I had said, she had a dream of my husband 3 years before, 3.5 years before, or 4 years before. And in terms of timing, I had met him in June. She had that dream around September. And I also had like 2 other friends also prophesy over me all at the same time in 2018. So I met him in 2018, and this is like 2001. So this is like 3 years, 4 years later. So my mom had, again, I always take everything like prophecy and dreams, I always put them on the shelf, because if they don't come to pass, then, you know, I don't want to be like sulking and be like, Lord, you told me this. But, you know, similar to like Sarah, where she was told, like, God told her, like, you're going to have a child, but it took her years to get there. I didn't want to get disappointed. So I remember my mom waking up and being like, okay, I had a dream of your husband. And I was like, yeah, okay. He's blonde, blue eyes, American. I'm like, yeah, right. I don't know any blonde hair, blue eye, American. And she's like, and he's an actor. I'm like, nope, definitely not going to marry an actor. I don't like actors. I'm an actor. I don't want to marry an actor. And so she had that dream. I had another friend, again, in the same month. So this is all September, I think, of 2018. I had a friend that said, I had a vision of you on TV with your husband, and you were speaking about Jesus in Hollywood or like something like that, and on TV. And I was like, wow, that's cool. So in a way, like just from that prophecy, I was like, okay, he must be someone that was like well-spoken and someone in the industry, because we're kind of like talking about acting and Jesus, which is, again, like, that's very strange. And I never told my mom that prophecy, or I didn't tell anyone that prophecy. So it wasn't like, you know, I had been making it up and telling people what to tell me. And then I had another friend that was like, had a vision of me. So both of them had visions. One of them also had a vision, and she was like, I see you on set with your husband, and she is standing behind my husband, and he's looking at me on set. And the set was being in in a living room, but it was a set in a living room, and he was watching me, and he was like, she could feel the love that he had for me. And I remember being like super tearful because I was like super single at the time, and I was like, wow, I would love my husband to love me that way, but you know, I've never experienced that kind of love before, so you know, woohoo, that'd be great. Which that vision actually has come to pass. We have worked on set together and for church, and we played a married couple. Actually, we did 2 jobs and we worked together, one for Home Depot and one for this marriage thing for church, and it was in a living room. So that's really funny how like that vision came to pass. But again, at the time, I was like, okay, that sounds cool. It sounds like he's either a producer or an actor. And then I had another friend, now that I remember about it, she had given me prophetic words about my acting career and also my husband. And she said, I think your husband is American. I think he's an entrepreneur. And she didn't say specifically he was an actor, but she did say he was American. And I was like, okay, this is very strange, like how a couple of my friends have prophesied over him being American in 2018. So backtrack, I go through a relationship. It was up and down, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm going to tell another story of like how God stopped that proposal, because that guy was very close to proposing, and that was like a month before he was going to propose and my 30th birthday. But basically now we're going to 2021. I connect with Justin, and all these prophetic words and these dreams come back to me, and I'm like, oh, I remember my mom telling me about the dream. So I screenshot it. I sent it to my mom. I'm like, Mom, is this similar to your dream? And she goes, very similar. I can't remember his face, but I remember his body structure. She remembers his outline, and she remembers him being like a muscular man, but not like necessarily like a really, really, really tall man. And my ex had been like extremely tall and really big, like a giant. And she remembers looking at him and being like, no, that's not your husband, because that's not the physique that she had remembered in her dream. Now he's like happy. He just had a little nappy poo. Did you have a little nappy poo? He's so cute. Look at this cute little monkey. Cute little monkey. Look at that. So I remember chatting to Justin, and then the next day I caught up with a friend who's married, and she has like 2 kids, and her husband was there as well. And I think I was like, she was like, how have you been? I'm like, oh man, I had this great chat with this guy, this American guy, and he's so cool. And I didn't say like, you know, I fall in love with him, because that's just weird, but I was like, man, I really liked him. I think, you know, if he was single, I totally would hang out with him. But he's in Atlanta, and I'm going to go to LA. And she's like, well, who knows? Like, he could be your husband. And I'm like, maybe he is. And then I remember her husband being like, dude, that is so weird that you're talking about the US, because again, I told you with the last video how God told me to move overseas. He was one of the guys that also had been like, yeah, I had this weird dream of you last night. Not in a creepy way, but he's like, I had a dream that you went to America and you like completely dogged us, which means like you kind of like stopped chatting to us. And I remember us being like super sad, but then in my dream, I remember being like, oh, well, she's busy and she's got things to do. And I think he had mentioned like, maybe this guy could be your husband. And I was like, you know what? I mean, I would love that. He's super cool. I really enjoyed chatting to him. I hope there's no red flags, but like so far, like, you know, I think I'd listened to the Sean Bowles talk by then. So I was like kind of like amazed by his story and testimony. But I remember them saying like, oh yeah, you know, he could be the one. And I was like, yeah, you know, that'd be cool. And then I continued chatting to him and praying about it and, you know, seeking the Lord. And another friend of mine who gave me that vision of being in the living room, and standing behind my husband, I was like, hey girl, like, you know, do you remember his face? She's like, no, I don't remember his face in my vision. But but by that time, I think I had chatted to Justin maybe for like 2 weeks. Like Christmas 2021 was like the date where we really started chatting like really regularly, pretty much every single day onwards. And so I was like, yeah, you know, I want you to meet him. And I just remember her chatting to him, and we got off the phone, and she's like, I think he's, I don't want to say this, but she's like, I really think that he's your husband. And I was like, I think so too. And it was just like one constantly after another. Like every time I would introduce him to somebody that I knew, they would be like, I feel a lot of peace about him. And I was like, me too. I have a lot of peace about this guy, you know. And it's so weird because I've never met him in real life other than when I met him in person. But I feel a lot of peace, and the more I chat to him, the more I feel more called to be with him. So I think by the time I had moved to the States, I had a lot of peace, and I think I had about 3 or 4 friends say that they had peace about him. And, you know, I had always, you know, made sure that he had met all my friends over the phone. Some of them, you know, some of my friends were like a bit worried, but they weren't necessarily like strong believers. So I kind of took it with a grain of salt. They were always like, you know, I'm a little bit worried about you just randomly going to Atlanta, which, you know, I totally get. Now that I'm here, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe I just moved to Atlanta to meet up with this random guy. It was scary, but at the time I had so much confirmation and peace that I wasn't afraid. So I had just packed up and just wanted to leave. I just really wanted to be here. So by the time I had moved to Atlanta, oh, did you do a little fart? Did a little fart, Baba? You looking down? By the time I had come to Atlanta, I already knew I was going to marry him, even though like he hadn't proposed, and we had chatted so much, like every single day. We chatted for like hours and hours. And by the time I had moved, we had already spoken about like, okay, if this is it, like if this is going to go well, if we get along in person, like let's get married. And we did. We ended up getting married within 3 months, but I think it was because I had so much peace, and he had peace as well. And most of all, I had that confirmation. I think my mom having that dream, my friends giving me the prophetic word, and then on top of that, peace. So anyway, so that was my story of how the Lord confirmed my husband to me. On his end, he just had peace. I think you guys already saw the testimony, but I just thought I may as well put it in like as a video on its own of how the Lord confirmed who was my husband. But anyway, I hope that was exciting for you guys. You know, that's one thing that I know about how you know that the person is not your husband is basically they're not going in the same direction as you. They're unequally yoked. And they could be a believer, they could be a Christian, but they might not see God in a similar way. But I have seen people like, not saying that, I have seen people that have been, you know, one person being a believer and one person not being a believer, and then both of them, or even 2 unbelievers, you know, being together before getting married, and then getting saved at the same time. Like they don't all work out. Some of them work out, and I just really think it is going back to who has the Lord confirmed for you. Because if the Lord has confirmed that for you, then it would work. But if he didn't give any sort of sign or confirmation, then, you know, it can be a really, really tough gig to have for the rest of your life. So yeah, and I remember with every other relationship, I never had that confirmation. I always felt there was no peace. Like there was never peace. There was never confirmation. I always felt like an angst. And the guy that I had dated just before Justin, I remember being like, oh, he's a great guy, but like, I just don't feel peace about him. I don't feel confirmation about him. And he was the same about me, which is why we broke up. But, and it was hard. It was really hard at the time. But I remember constantly praying, Lord, please confirm if this is my husband for me. And he did. He did for the right guy, and for the wrong guy, it was always turmoil, inner turmoil within my spirit. I always felt like the thought of marrying them made me want to not vomit, made me feel sick to my stomach. And my ex actually said that about his previous girlfriends. He was like, every time I would think about them, he was like, I would feel sick. And I was like, I never understood it until like I had experienced it. And every time I saw them, I was like, oh, I can't marry this person. There's nothing, well, I mean, there were things wrong, but you know, everything, there's always something wrong with someone. No one's perfect, although Justin is pretty perfect. He is pretty perfect for me, but yeah, you can work through everything, but it has to be confirmed by the Lord. So anyway, I hope that was a fun story for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed having Bo Bear in the video. Yay! Wee! You chunky? Trying to show everybody how cute you are? Look how cute he is. I am cute. No, he's just looking down at his feet. He's just really intrigued by my tights right now. They're pink and got spots on them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and like and subscribe if you want to hear more. We've got plenty more stories to tell. I might do one right after this just because I'm in the role. I'm in a role of filming, so just thought may as well just get it done. All right, love you guys. Bye.